Welcome to the Project Endure podcast, the place where we talk about life, endurance, persistence, perspective, and so much more. I'm Joe Rinaldi, and I'll be your host. Let's jump in. Before we get started, let me ask you a question. Have you ever noticed that what you wear has the power to change how you feel? Project Endure apparel is designed to remind you that easy won't make you stronger, and that growth is an uncomfortable choice that we all have the privilege to make every day. Look good, feel good, and perform good. Head to the link in the show notes to shop Project Endure apparel and keep on doing hard things. Now, let's get to the episode. Welcome back to the Project Endure podcast, episode 183. We have myself, Joe Rinaldi, and in the state of Iowa, we have a very, very, very special guest, Lindsey Terronez. Lindsey, how are you?
Hi, I am great. It's cold here, so I'm a little chilly, but it's great.
This episode it's been a long time coming. I have wanted to have you on the podcast for a long time, and we just haven't been able to connect in a way where it's been able to happen, but we are here and I am so excited. And before I get into anything on my end, I would love for you to introduce yourself to people listening.
All right. Well, I'm Lindsey. I am a CrossFit coach, ultramarathon runner, now getting into high rocks, surprisingly. Chiropractor, not really practicing at the moment, but hopefully taking a really awesome job opportunity here pretty soon. So I'm super pumped about that. But yeah, go-getter, love to do long distance endurance things. So yeah.
I am going to throw a curveball in this introduction, and I am going to ask you to describe yourself with 5 words, 5 adjectives. If you could only tell people these 5 words about who you are, what would those words be? What comes to mind?
That's a good one.
I have one that I'll throw out there after you give your 5, and I'll give some context when I do that. But what 5 come to mind for you?
I would say passionate, a lot of passion, just whatever I get into. I am always thinking of others, sometimes before myself, often, very often. That'd be another one. Outgoing, really outgoing. What is that? 3? Mm-hmm. I would say relentless. Like I can be really just relentless on if there's a goal or something in mind. Like I'm just going to stick to it and just be really invested. I guess I could be with passionate, but and the other one, I think maybe not a lot of people know is I'm very empathetic. I may not show a lot of emotion, but there is a lot of emotion underneath the surface.
Awesome. So the word that came to mind for me, and I hope you don't take this the wrong way because it's a word that I see as positive and a word I would use to describe myself is stubborn. And I think stubborn goes hand in hand with relentless. And I'll just kind of open this up and then this will blend into the rest of our conversation. We've worked together on multiple preps for multiple things, from shorter running distances all the way through 100-mile prep. And you just, the weather could be bad. You could be sick. You could have, pain somewhere. And I could say, it's all right. Let's take a quick step back and, we don't have to push today. We could, and you just go out and do the work. Even through the 100-mile race where we got to meet in person, for, I guess, the second time after the Project Endure event last year.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
You would come into the aid stations and I couldn't tell if you were in the most amount of pain you've ever been in or if you were having a great time, because you just had this poker face where you were so locked in and nothing was going to get in your way. And so I think stubborn is maybe the sixth word. And I think that's a good thing.
I think a lot of people in my life would say that's a good one.
Yeah. So
yeah, I definitely can be stubborn.
yeah. So with that being said, I think we'll jump right into kind of the deep stuff. And I'm excited for this because we've known each other for a while and I know parts of your story, but I don't know all of it. And I think there's a lot that is going to be relatable and impactful for the people listening. So the first big question, Lindsey, is when you look back at your life so far, what's the hardest thing that you've ever had to handle that you did not get to choose for yourself?
There's a few things that come to mind for sure. I think that I've had a little bit of a complex life as far as in my 20s. I definitely don't ever want to play the victim card, woe is me. Um, but definitely a situation that rocked my world that I just wasn't prepared for would of course be um, the accident that I had while I was at work. That definitely just changed my life, changed my perspective, changed the way that I approach working out. I think that is why I can be so relentless and so locked in, because I know that it was almost like completely taken from me in a sense. So yeah, I would say that is the first thing that could spiral into many other things. Yeah.
So why don't we go there? Why don't we go back to everything being normal before the accident that you alluded to? I would love if you could set the stage with what did life look like before all of this happened, and then in as much detail as you feel comfortable with, walk us through that day where things changed.
Yeah. I had just actually moved from Chicago area to Atlanta, Georgia. So newbie in the area. I just started some undergrad classes to finish up before I would start chiropractic school. And I was just very excited to be there. I had just started this new job. I think I was maybe a month or so in. And yeah, I meeting plenty of new people, new friends, new places. I had fallen in love with this new place that I had lived. Finally, not dealing with the cold anymore or the snow. I actually remember the day I was in Chicago area and there was a blizzard and I still had to go to class. And I just thought to myself, never again am I going to do this ever. And then literally, I think 6 months later, I made the decision to go to Georgia. So yeah, I made it happen. But yeah, I had just moved there, just started this new job, and it was just like a normal day. I actually was working a double that day. So I was a server at a restaurant. I worked the morning shift. Things had gone smoothly. It was a beautiful day. Um, and then I got to have like an hour and a half break and went and got food, came back, and I had actually come back a little early. And there was a girl that was leaving the morning shift that was kind of closing lunch. And she said, "Hey, do you mind just picking up this table for me right now? I really got to go." And I was like, "Yeah, sure. No problem." Um, and so I went up to the table, talked to them. I can remember their faces, and they were just really excited, very happy to be there. Um, made a couple jokes with them, got them their drinks, and then just had come over and was ready to take their order. And all of a sudden there's just this loud, it sounded like an explosion. So this all happened so fast that my brain really didn't register like that it could be anything other than an explosion somewhere. That's just how it sounded. So I immediately, where I was facing, I could just like lock direction and look at the kitchen. So my eyes looked at the kitchen, no explosion, and then bam, like I'm getting hit from behind and like thrown to the side, and everything just went dark for a second. It was just a complete and utter shock. And then obviously you can just hear the chaos around you, just screaming. And there wasn't actually a lot of people in the building at the time because it was the transition from lunch to dinner. And luckily, other people that were in the restaurant were like over to the right of me in booths. So I was kind of like smack dab in the center of the restaurant at this one table with the only table in that section. So, as horrific as this all was, it's just a really good thing that it wasn't a full on restaurant in the center of the building. But yeah, so after I kind of came to, I looked around and there's a big minivan, like right, like on my foot and right in my line of sight. And I really just did not register what was happening. It just seemed so like unreal. Like, is this really happening? Is this really what I just heard? And I couldn't move. I think my body was just in shock. I really just felt like I couldn't move. And then I remember there was a baby in the restaurant, but they were over on the other side, away from everything. So I looked over there because I wanted to make sure that the baby was okay. That was just my first immediate thing. And um, luckily, as far as I saw, things were good. And I just kind of laid there for a second. And um, the woman who was driving the car actually came over to me and, just said, "Are you okay?" And she was obviously panicking in her own way. And I just still I couldn't find words for what was happening. And then a couple guys started like yelling, "Oh my gosh, the van's on her foot. We got to get it up." So they were lifting the van, like literally three guys just lifting the van. And then I just had to kind of crawl from underneath that area. And then, yeah, shortly after that, I think EMTs and stuff arrived. There was a guy that I never actually saw his face. I don't even remember his name. Um, they didn't want me to move because they were afraid if like anything else was broken or any spinal injuries that they would make it worse. So I basically just had to stay still. And this guy was just like, like rubbing my head, like telling me everything's okay. And I hate attention so much. And I just was trying to act so normal, like everything was cool and trying to conversate with him and ask him questions like, is everyone okay? Is so and so all right? Um, and yeah, he just kind of calmed me down. And I had a lot of glass in my back. So when they actually flipped me over to get onto like the stretcher, they actually also had to cut my pants, which was so embarrassing at the time. Like the last thing I want is for these EMTs and paramedics and firefighters all to just like be around me as my pants are getting cut. And they flipped me over and I could just like feel the shards of glass like poking in my back. And I initially wasn't sure if that was glass or if it was maybe my nerves. Eventually we did find out that it was glass when we were in X-ray. But yeah, I that whole scene and that whole scenario just completely changed my life. One of the young kids that I was serving, he unfortunately did not survive his injuries. I was the closest to him, so we were literally inches apart. The only difference was he got struck by the vehicle sitting down while I was standing. And then he just kind of got pushed in front of the vehicle, whereas I got pushed to the side and out of the way. So I didn't actually find out that he had passed away until I got to the hospital, and I was actually in the x-ray room. So that was just like really hard to hear. I obviously only spent maybe 5 minutes with him. But it was just sad knowing that how close we were. And he was so young. He was only like 19 years old. So I couldn't believe it. I truly could not believe it. My heart just like broke for that whole situation. Yeah, that was kind of the entry to what happened. And pretty much the woman, long story short, just mistaked the accelerator for the brake. And her mind just kept thinking that she was on the brake. So she pushed harder, which caused her to then drive full on into this restaurant. And there was like a glass entryway, and then there was actually a wall separating the entryway to the dining room. And she actually went through that. And then there was a wall with a projection screen on it, which she had also taken down. So, like, the whole restaurant looked literally like a disaster. Just the whole thing had come down in the front. Um, but she ended up being okay. Her husband that was in the car with her was okay. And then no one else was physically hurt or harmed. The other kid that was sitting at the table, who was on the opposite side of me, so to my right, he ended up coming out physically okay, but mentally, obviously, just a complete mess. Like after that experience.
Thank you so much for explaining all of that. You're so composed right now, just talking about it. I would imagine that it's taken some time to get to a point where you can talk about it like this. What were you going through, in the days, weeks, months after this? And what happened to your foot, ankle, etc.?
Yeah, it definitely has taken a lot of time. I think for a while, I tried to push aside what I was feeling because I felt like I didn't have a right because I was alive. So it definitely took a while. I was so incredibly lucky, and doctors and everyone I've talked to, they just truly cannot believe that my foot wasn't completely broken with a vehicle on top of my foot. Um, and they also couldn't believe that nothing else was worse off than what it was. I did have knee surgery. I had kind of like terrible triad surgery. So meniscus, MCL, ACL was all completely just a mess. So I had that. I actually had so much hematoma and abrasions on both legs that I couldn't put weight on my feet or my legs for about a month. So I was in crutches, and they did actually cast my foot just to make it easier for me to walk, um, which I thought was kind of strange, but it did help me walk a little better. Um, but yeah, I for about a month I was just struggling to get around. It's like the class, I refused to like miss class. That stubbornness that we talked about earlier, it's like coming to light right now. But I didn't want anyone to feel sorry for me or anything, and I didn't want to make it an excuse not to do what I needed to do. So my school at the time was on a hill, and it was not at the time very handicap accessible. Um, so it was a nightmare trying to get around, but I did it. I managed. I did have to do physical therapy, of course, before surgery and then after surgery, which I'm sure you know all about that. I went to PT for almost a year, actually. My surgery went well, but the very next day after surgery, my knee had swollen up to the size of a football. Like, the doctor had never even seen swelling like that in his whole career. So I actually fainted
Oh,
at my house. They had put me on a bunch of different medications that I think just were not working well. They made me extremely dehydrated, and I passed out. I had to go to the ER, and um, they didn't really help me. They gave me fluids, did what they needed to do, but then I had to go back to basically the guy who did my surgery, and he had to remove like over 100 cc's plus of fluid from my knee, which, to be honest, was the most painful experience because there is nothing they can really do to numb you at the time. It's just kind of get in there, get it out, and deal with it. And oh man, I can still just remember that kind of like pain of someone just sticking this huge needle in you and moving your knee that you just had surgery on around to get it out. So that was just a whole process. But um, it was a whole entire year, I think, almost before I could be released from physical therapy and actually get back into doing the activities that I had done before.
So I'll throw a quote out there and I'll follow it up with a question. But this quote is from Chuck Palahniuk. Sorry, Chuck, if you're listening and I butchered your last name. It's a tough one. But he said, "It's so hard to forget pain, but it's even harder to remember sweetness. We have no scar to show for happiness. We learn so little from peace." What did you learn and how did you change as a result of everything you just described?
Gosh, I learned a lot about myself. Um, also how short life is and how short it can be. I was so young at the time too that there was still this naive presence. And it took me over a year or two to actually seek like a therapist to talk to about this. Because I just wasn't doing well emotionally, mentally. Um, I had actually had PTSD and I didn't really realize. Very loud noises would startle me, and I just had a really, really hard time. So I actually did get diagnosed with PTSD. I had to go through some specific therapy for that. Um, so that was just like a whole experience in itself, like learning to accept that something is going on and you just need to go through the motions, go through the process, and come out stronger on the other side. And then, obviously not being able to work out the way that I did. I was always on an athletic team, always in some way athletic, and not being able to do that for almost an entire year in any way was awful. So I just realized how much I really do love being active and just what it brings to my life. And I mean, I've just been going at it ever since. Like the doctor, of course, they can never say you're going to be 100%. And when I heard those words, I I didn't like that. Um, so I just literally set out to prove that percentage wrong. And now I'm stronger than I've ever been. I've run farther than I ever thought I would. I've lifted heavier than I ever thought I could. So I've learned a lot about beating the odds in certain situations. And, um, I've gone through so many experiences after that have completely just made my mentality so much stronger. But I think initially that's where the start of it was. Like, if I can go through this and get through this, um, I'm still alive for a reason and I want to fulfill that purpose. So, yeah.
It's cool to hear how an initial accident, struggle, hard time, maybe even sense of weakness was a spark for so much strength long term. And it's hard to see it in the moment, right? And I would imagine that when this all happened in the days, weeks, months afterward, there likely wasn't a part of you that was thinking, I'll be stronger than ever someday, or there will be things to learn from this, and I'll be a better person because of this. But the truth is, when we zoom out long term, we can see that those things are all the case, and it's awesome to hear you say that. What would you tell Lindsey 1 month post accident to help her get through all of that, maybe with a little bit more ease or efficiency, um, and not take so long to go seek out the help in the beginning?
Ooh, that's a good one. Uh, what I say? I think the easiest one, and I've said this in a lot of situations of what I would tell my past self, but like, you have the power and you had the power all along. And I think there was like a lot of insecurities too that didn't help those situations, like thinking that I had to be strong, I had to be this or that. Um, you can still have the power to get through things, but you can also have the emotion to feel what you're feeling.
Mm.
So, I would definitely just say, hey, like one foot in front of the other. This is just the beginning. You can do this. Just stay strong, head up, and forge on. And I think that's just the mentality that I've just truly had ever since. And even in those moments, like I had it, but I didn't know I had it, kind of thing.
There's this awesome quote that I've shared on the podcast many times. I've shared it at the past 3 Project Endure events, and I'll share it again at this year's event. But it's from Alexis Carroll, who said, um, oh man, wow, I'm blanking because I'm not in the mode. I got it right here. One sec. Let me pull it up. It's like one of
No,
the
you're good.
best quotes ever. And I've said it so many times. Man cannot remake himself without suffering, for he is both the marble and the sculptor.
Yes, I've heard you say
Yeah,
this.
and it's powerful to me because that image of a block of marble getting chipped and chiseled away at to reveal a sculpture that exists within, it's not so much about going and finding yourself. It's not about, trying to seek out, who am I on the outside? It's about I already exist on the inside and I need to chip away these pieces that are masking that, right? I am strong already. I just need to uncover that. And I think there's a big difference between trying to find who you are versus forging who you've already been. And it sounds like this accident, and I'm sure some other things in your life, have helped strip away some of the surface to allow you to see the inner strength that has always been there.
Definitely.
So
Absolutely.
I want to transition this into the second question, the second big question. I think this one might be a bit easier to talk about, but there are hard things we deal with, and then there are hard things we choose. What are the hardest things you've ever chosen to do? And I say hardest in plural on purpose because you've done some hard things, and I'd love to hear about multiple.
I think the first one that will immediately come to mind because it's literally where it's drastically just affected my life. I chose to move away from Atlanta, which was one of the hardest decisions I think I could have ever made. It was like gut wrenching. Everything that was associated with why I wanted to leave or should leave, or I just felt, my time had come that I need to push myself out of my comfort zone and I need to become a happier person. And I can't do that sitting here. So I did make the decision to move to Florida. I knew maybe 4 people. um, so I think that whole move in itself and just everything that was associated with why I moved away was one of the hardest choices I ever made, but one of the greatest decisions I could have ever come out of my life thus far. So that would be number one. And then um, a 2 would just be Ironman. 100% training for the half Ironman by myself, and swimming, getting through that. I'm not a swimmer. I'm not a good swimmer. But that was like the scariest part of that whole race. So that, and then really just, I don't think I was afraid of the 100-mile distance. Um, I knew what the expectation was, but I definitely know that it was a very hard. It wasn't a hard decision to make to do it, but it was hard knowing that this is going to get real tough and you're really going to have to go through it if you want to see the end.
So I would love to talk about all 3 of those, and we might as well go in that same order. So that decision to leave Atlanta is an interesting one. And I'm going to ask this question in a certain way because I'm sure there are people listening to this who are in a place around people doing things that feel good. Maybe it even feels right. But there's a part of them, maybe someone would call it their gut or their intuition or just something that feels like it's not where they need to be forever. Or maybe there's a new chapter that's about to emerge, but they're struggling with how to listen to that feeling. They're struggling with the idea of leaving something that feels good for the potential of something that could be great. How did you come to the decision to leave Atlanta, even though it felt good?
Yeah, oh gosh, to make a long story short, I had gone through a really devastating breakup, which they all are, no matter what shape or form they're in. And um, I just felt very broken. And I had this grief about the loss of just so many things that were a part of my life that I thought would be there forever. And um, it was just very hard and it was very challenging. And I would go to work and I would have this lump in my throat and I would have it there all day. And I know anyone who's ever gone to any situation and they want to cry, but they can't, knows exactly what I'm talking about. And I would just sit there and I would go through the motions and I would see the people that at work that love me and care about me and were being so kind and helpful. And I would leave those places and I would go home and I would just like let it all out. It's like you're finally by yourself and you just release everything that you'd been holding in all day. I had my gym friends. I still hung out with them. I still did CrossFit competitions. Life was still moving, but I still had that lump in my throat every single day. And I still felt this sadness and this grief, which of course it's going to be there. It takes time. But I knew that, and just certain things kept happening. Like I would get a flat tire and then I needed to pay for a new tire. And this happened with my car and I lost my car key and just all of these really just like things kept happening and it kept kind of digging a deeper hole and that I felt like I couldn't get out of. And finally one day I was just like, this is not the life that I know that I want to live. This is not it. And this isn't the life God has for me. He doesn't want me to feel this way. You need to do something about it. And this may be the hardest decision that you ever make. And so I applied to jobs all over the United States. And I just said, whatever one says yes first, that's where you're going. Like no ifs, ands, or buts. That's where you go. And I mean, a lot of people thought I was like crazy for doing that, but I just knew that that was the right thing to do. I knew that my time, at least at the moment, had come to an end where I was. And in order for me to grow, achieve what I want to achieve, and find the person that I really am and that I really want to be without all these things that I thought I would have forever, right? And a job in Florida said yes first, and I said okay. And of course, the next day, a job in Texas called me, and I was like, oh, I really wanted that one, but I'm like, no, I need to stay true to what I said. I'm going to go to Florida. So I went to Florida, and I will say the first month I probably cried every day. I mean, it's because you're letting go of what you thought would always be, and you're entering into what is now and accepting everything that's coming into your life in the present. So it took a while, but I told myself, don't be upset if you cry. Like I feel like so many times in life, I've always got beaten myself up for being emotional or crying. And I was like, don't do that right now. Allow yourself to feel what you're feeling and feel the grief and just let it be. And don't be so hard on yourself. I could have done. I just let myself feel it. And I think everybody thinks that things are going to get better within like a week or a month. And they put this pressure on a timeline. And I can, like, for a fact, tell everyone listening, it did not even take 4 months for me to finally feel like, oh my gosh, I'm completely healed. It has taken over a year and a half, but I've had to keep applying the tools that I've learned and keep moving forward and keep um, just being proud of the steps that I've taken. And it's it's just been amazing to know that I going there, I cried almost every day to then leaving that place and feeling so good and so proud of who I've become through that change and that time while I was there. Not to drag that story on so long, but I could talk about that whole situation for a long time.
No, I think it's really important because we can't rush the things that take time. And I think putting expectations and timelines on things creates a sense of pressure that sometimes we can't control, you know. Sometimes we have to let life take its course, and we need time for things to process, to heal, to adapt, to adjust. The thought that comes to mind first is, if you're listening to this and you have a new neighbor or a new friend or a new coworker and they just came from a different place, right? Maybe this is a great reminder to just go check on that person, be extra nice, take them out for coffee, invite them over, do something that makes them feel welcomed, because it is really hard to be in a new place, let alone not know many people. So that's one. And then two, I love this idea of seeds. Seeds take time, you know. When you go plant something in the ground, the next day it's not a full grown plant. You know, you could plant a seed and it could take days, weeks, months, even years in some cases for anything to show above ground. And it takes a lot of below ground growth and effort and patience for something to show above ground results. Change takes time, and it also takes the right soil and the right nutrients and water and sun. And so we have to be doing these things for ourselves, like giving ourselves grace and taking care of ourselves and pushing ourselves and finding supportive people in order to grow. And it's so cool to hear that you came out of that season with lessons, with growth, being able to look back and not cry about all the times that you've cried in the past.
Yeah, that I even remember I made a video one day. I had started working at a Cairo office, and I had to go to like another office in West Palm Beach. So I had a pretty long drive, and I got there and I just was having a day. And I just sat in my car and I made this video because I was like, I'm gonna remember this moment and how I feel. And I want to look back and I want to know that everything that I did was worth it. So I made this quick video and I just was a little emotional and just I hope it's all worth it. Everything I've done, all these hard things I've transitioned to, moving away from my friends, moving away from a place I'd always thought I'd live. I hope that it's worth it. And I am so much stronger. And that was like 2.5 years ago. And I look back at that video sometimes and it just makes me smile. I'm like, I did it. I am now here 2.5 years later, and it was absolutely worth it. Every single part of it, the ups, the downs, the tears, the anger, everything was worth it.
I I love that you know that it's worth it, and I love that you recorded a video and you have this memory that's solidified that you can look back on. I don't know if I've ever shared this on the podcast. We're approaching 200 episodes, so there's not a lot that I haven't said already.
Yeah.
But when I was working full time as a physical therapist out of school, I was commuting to Philadelphia from where my parents lived in New Jersey. So I had a long car ride. And there's just this one day I realized I didn't want to do this, meaning working in an outpatient clinic for someone else forever. And I was so fed up and I was emotional. And I recorded this 10-minute long voice message just in my car on my phone. And it was raining, and you can hear the rain pounding on the car in the voice note. I've only listened back to it maybe 2 or 3 times since then. And this was 5 or so years ago. And it's me just expressing all the things that I want and all the frustration that I have that I'm not there yet. And I said, I want to build a business. I want to work for myself. I want to impact people. I want to do XYZ. And it's amazing to look back and see that those things have happened. But if it weren't for me recording that voice note, I would have forgotten about that moment. Right. And I think this could be another great reminder or a call to action for people listening. If you're frustrated or if you're feeling on top of the world, write it down, record a video, make a voice note, because these moments in our lives are so fleeting and it's easy to forget the good, the bad, and everything in between. And to be able to look back on that and have that memory, I'm sure for you is a great reminder that things do get better and that taking risks is worth it and that you can bet on yourself because you trust yourself to get through things. So I just love that.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, okay, that's hard thing number one. Hard thing number two,
Yes.
at training solo for your first half Ironman, and you said in specific the swim. Tell us more about what was so challenging about that pursuit.
Yeah, so I had actually originally signed up for this pre-COVID, and then I had signed up with a couple important people in my life at the time, and had no business signing up for an Ironman, half Ironman, by the way. Not a biker. I can run, not a swimmer at all by any means. So obviously the race got deferred during COVID. And then the year after COVID, the person that I was going to do it with broke their hand. So I didn't feel like I could do it without them. And then moving on to the third year now, I have to make a choice. Do I do this race or lose my money? And someone had made a comment to me that was like, well, you can't really afford all the equipment that goes into this race. Maybe you just shouldn't do it. And I know that they probably didn't mean for it to sound the way that it sounded, but I was like, you know what? I'm actually going to show people that you don't need to have all the money in the world to do a half Ironman. And I'm going to do this. And I think that a lot of people who knew me didn't think that I would officially follow through with doing it because I didn't have a lot of money. I didn't have someone to train me. I didn't know anyone in South Florida that I could do any of these things with. Um, so I started training, and since I didn't know how to swim, I didn't want to go to a local pool to train because everyone would see that I suck at swimming. So I would wake up so early. I think I woke up at 4 a.m. and I would go to the condo pool. So I lived in a condo down there, go to the pool, and I would swim laps, and not very well, but I would do it before everyone woke up, before anyone could see me. The security guards basically knew I was there and would just pretend that they didn't see me because you're not supposed to be in the pool until I think like 8 a.m. or something. But we had like a little thing going on, and I was like, just don't tell anyone. I'm training for this half Ironman. So yeah, I would swim laps, and there were so many frustrating days. There was a day I was in the pool for 10 minutes, and I just was like, that's it. I'm done. I'm out. Like, this is frustrating. I can't do this. It was mostly a breathing issue. Like, the ability, the athleticism is there, but just like the technique of being able to breathe freestyle was an issue. So I don't know what happened to me as a child, why I would freak out about the whole swim thing. But yeah, there were mornings I would wake up and look at my ceiling, and I would just say, like, I do not want to do this. Like, I don't want to go out. I don't want to run. I don't want to ride my bike. And I would have to sit there and tell myself, this is where it counts. This is where it counts. This is the moment where you get to decide, do you want to finish the race or you don't? And people don't think that days like that matter. They actually do. Because if I would have skipped the 10 or 15 times I thought about, I don't want to do this, then I would have lost 15 or so training sessions to get better. So yeah, I would just mostly every morning I would try to swim. And then I would actually bike a stationary bike during my break at work. And I would run when I could, whether that was after work, after swim in the morning. I would just make it happen. And I tried to follow a couple little training plans here and there, but just really just did my own thing. And I saved up for my tri-suit. It took me a while. They're not cheap. And then I rented my bike for the race day. Like I literally rented my bike. I wouldn't actually suggest like not getting on a bike and riding around town first before doing a half Ironman. Would not suggest that all ever. But I just didn't have a bike at the time. All my friends that did have, I had a couple of friends that said I could borrow their bike, but they were like 5'4" and you couldn't adjust the seat. I'm pretty tall. So I was just like, it's not going to work. And if anyone knows South Florida driving, like getting on a bike and driving or cycling around South Florida is not always the safest. But um, yeah, I just used a stationary bike, which is crazy now that I look back and think about it. I did a couple training sessions with a bike shop before actual race day. And then they got my bike that I rented tuned up and rented a car and went on my way and did the dang thing. And I will say, I when I finished the race, I didn't cry. I wasn't super emotional like you'd think. I actually got emotional, cried during the race. I'll never forget it. There's like so many people that are doing this Ironman. And for some reason, it's just me going down this hill in the countryside of Georgia. And it's just me. And I'm flying down this hill so fast, faster than I've ever been riding on a bike in my whole life. And I just like, I'm looking around and I'm just like, I did it. Like I made it to this moment. I made it past the swim, which I never thought I would do. And I did it. Like everything that I told myself I would do for every person that thought that I wouldn't get here, I did it. And I just proved to myself that it's possible. I just have to work really hard at it. I have to do the work day in and day out, and it will show. And yeah, I finished the race. And after that, I just wanted more, which would lead into part 3.
Well, before we get to part 3, I just want to highlight something you said that I think is unbelievably important for people to understand. And understanding it is one thing, putting it to practice is another. Those small, hard, seemingly insignificant moments of it's cold and dark outside, I'm in my warm bed, I'll snooze the alarm, I don't want to do this training today. Nobody sees it. It feels like it doesn't matter. It matters a lot. It matters a lot because that small decision changes who we are. Every decision changes who we are. And by choosing to take the easy path, the convenient path, the comfortable path when nobody's watching, that makes it more likely that you're going to do it the next time and the next time and the next time. And those things really do add up over time. And so with all of that being said, Lindsey, we'll transition to part number 3. And so the 100-mile distance, you felt like there was something to chase there and it was daunting, but you wanted to do it. Tell us a little bit more about why the 100-mile distance was important to you. And then we can go into the actual completion of your 100 miles too.
Yeah. So I think after completing half Ironman, I have been going through my head about like, I cannot believe I just did that. I truly just like all the work and all the nights and everything. I just couldn't believe finally did it. And then I had been thinking about ultra marathon. Like if I can do this distance, like let's see if I can do the same distance, but only running. So I had listened to a podcast with Nick Bear, Sally McRae, and I just listened to her story. Gosh, I think they did that podcast like 2 years ago that I listened to it. It was one of the first ones they did together. And she was just telling me her whole story. And I was like, man, her mentality is exactly how I think and just what I strive for, what I want to show others that they're capable of. Like this is solidifying right now that I'm doing an ultra marathon. So then that's when we got connected.
Mm-hmm.
And then we started kind of training at first to really push my half marathon pace. Great. We did that. We were super successful with that. Great time. And then we started getting into ultra marathon training very quickly after. I did last man standing ultra marathon, made it to 50 miles, which was incredible. That whole experience, that whole weekend, just so amazing. I'll never forget it. Very thankful for all the people that were a part of it as well. And then after that, there was a no-brainer. It was just, I just did 50 miles and I was on a runner's high, I think, for like a whole week after that. Like your first 50, it was so cool. So I remember like a week after I did that 50, I had a stress fracture in my foot. So then it took me out for a while in training. And I was like, dang, this makes me want it even more now. So yeah, I know I had been looking around for different races to do, but you had approached me about Viaduct 100 and it just made sense for me to do that. Be my first one. I'd feel really comfortable. You'd be there. And Jess, Justin, Jordan, Taylor, everyone who was involved in that was just so welcoming to that weekend. I couldn't have asked for a better first 100 miler.
Yeah, I will say this. When you showed up to that 100 miler, we all had shared an Airbnb. So you came with Greg. Greg had picked you up from the airport and drove you. and you were so organized. I don't know if I ever told you this. I was so impressed with your organization. I talked about it all weekend while you were out running and we were at the aid station. It was just like you were so dialed in from even before you got there. You were just ready. And you flew in, you got there late. It wasn't even like you got like a full night of restful, like, let me relax and sit. You flew in, you know, Greg drove you, you got to the Airbnb. It was dark outside. We saw a bear in the backyard.
Yeah, that was wild.
And then you went to bed and you woke up super early and it was
I did before everybody. Everyone was like, we're waking up at this time. And then I woke up at that time and everyone's still sleepy.
and you rocked it. And we don't need to go through every single mile of the entire race, but I would love to hear if there was anything that really stood out to you about that specific race and that experience finishing the 100.
So first things first that I will say is I remember being at the Airbnb and about to go to sleep, and Jordan looked at me and he said, "You're gonna finish this. Like, I can just tell." And I was just really taken aback by that because I had literally just met him. And I was like, yeah, whatever it takes, man. I'm gonna do this. And then I woke up the next morning and I wasn't nervous at all. Like I truly can say, like, I think I was more nervous for this podcast than being nervous to run 100 miles. But yeah, I woke up and I was just like, we know the mission. We know it needs to be done. And we're just going to go out and do it. Um, so everything was feeling great. I loved running with Jess and Taylor, loved it. We had a blast, us girls, just running the first like couple loops. And then I started getting really nauseous. And that's just when things crumbled.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I was not prepared for that.
So Greg, Greg Terronez, episode 124 of this podcast. And as we're speaking, I'm realizing everybody there for the most part has been on the podcast.
I know. That's so cool.
But Greg had paced you for a good chunk of the back half. And at one point, him and I switched out. And I just remember Greg, who is a very optimistic, positive, upbeat human being, look just exhausted and tired and as close to like down as I've ever seen him. And it was just tough out there, right? The course was a little wet. It was dark. We're out in the middle of nowhere, Pennsylvania. And you were hurting and you were having a hard time. I remember you would come back to the aid station where we were set up with the tent, and you would just have this kind of like zoned out look on your face where I wasn't sure what you were feeling or if you were even there, but your physical body was there.
Yeah.
And you just pushed through one step at a time. And I would love to hear what it felt like to realize that you were down the home stretch about to finish. And once you actually crossed, what emotions ran through you?
Yeah. Greg hated how rocky that course was. I remember I was like cruising at one point, making it turn around to the loop to come back. And Greg's behind me, which is crazy because the whole rest of the race, when we weren't at that section, he was in front of me. And I could just tell he's like hated the rock so much. But oh gosh, I remember being in that race and I kept, like, I'll be honest, I was shocked at myself too. Because I feel like my mentality is pretty strong, but I had this thought, like, I think I'm gonna miss my flight. Like, if I can't get back in under so and so hours, like, I'm gonna miss my flight. Like, what do I do? And then all these other excuses like kept rolling in after that. Like, maybe you don't need to finish, or like, how are you gonna finish? Like, because I wasn't getting any calories in. I mean, thank God Amanda had made the suggestion to water down and dilute the gel packets because that was the one thing that was helping. So thank you, Amanda. Shout out to you. Um, but yeah, I just, these excuses kept rolling. And I remember we were coming back. Me and Jess had come to the aid station at the same time. And her and I just looked at each other and we just started crying. Like, we just innately knew we both are in a lot of pain and we're both feeling it and we're just going to let it all out right now. So we both started crying. And I remember Jordan looked at me and he's like, "What can I do for you?" And you even said, what can I do for you? I I don't know. Like, I don't know. And I remember in that moment, Justin was kind of consoling Jess, and I was just kind of listening to what he was saying. And um, I just said, okay, change your clothes and see how you feel. All these negative thoughts need to go away, and they need to go away now. So do one thing that you know can help make them go away. Change your clothes. So I went into the little tent that we had. I changed my clothes, and it was like I was a whole new person. And I pretty much was just like, all right, let's go. There's no time to sit and think about anything anymore. We just have to move. And that was just kind of what I tried to keep my mentality with. Just move one foot in front of the other. I know it hurts. I know it sucks, but we're not giving up. And then the last 6 miles were probably the worst miles ever. I remember I came to the aid station and I was like, hey, do you have my ghost? And everyone's like, no, no ghost here. And I just was looking so forward to that energy drink, and I really needed it so bad. Um, and I know Greg could probably attest to this, that I was just in a bad place for those 6 miles. And it took me forever. It literally took me forever to do 6 miles. Um, and finally, we were about a half mile out. And Greg was just like, we are almost there. Like, you need to pick it up. And he kind of pushed me a little bit. And then we come from around a corner, and then Jordan is sitting right there on the sidewalk. And it was just like this huge relief because I knew we were close. And Jordan's like, Linz, what's up? Like, what's wrong? You're almost there. And I was like, really? And he's like, yes, let's go. And we all just like sprinted to the finish line. And it was just such an incredible experience to know that I had completed that. And I was all smiles at the end. Again, like no tears at the end of that race, just big, big smiles, and just so proud of it. And I think that's why I love endurance racing, because it's kind of like life. Like you really go through these ebbs and flows of really, really bad times, but then you like come out of them and you finish or accomplish something amazing. So yeah. And then of course I signed up for another one like less than a month later.
Just can't get enough.
I know. Yeah.
Um,
Learned a lot from that first one.
Yeah. And I asked this to everyone, Lindsey, and I actually think I'm going to pseudo combine the last two questions because I think we've hit on them multiple times already through this conversation. But, the first part is what does the word endurance mean to you? And the second part is if someone's going through a tough time right now, they're on those last 6 miles of a really hard race in their life, either actually or proverbially, what would you say to that person who's going through a hard time? So, what does endurance mean to you? And what would you say to someone who's just going through it right now?
Oh man. Um, Endurance to me means no shortcuts, and going, of course, going the distance, but knowing that you are going to go through some pain to get there. I've always loved being an endurance athlete. Like, I think even when I did CrossFit, the longest workouts were my favorite because it was in those workouts that I could watch someone who's so good at being good for 10 minutes not be so good when it came to 20 minutes and 30 minutes. And I loved it. So I've always just had this like relentless like grunt of a force of just wanting to go the distance. And endurance can be more than just an athletic piece. It can be for anything in life. Going the distance at work because you want a promotion, or going the distance in your relationship because you want to make it work. It's more than just that one thing. And I think that's why I love it. I mean, life's an endurance race. I mean, we're not technically racing, but I mean, we're in it for the long haul, you know? Um, and then What was the second question?
Yeah,
Sorry.
no, if someone right now is feeling the weight of endurance and they're going through a hard time and they feel tired and exhausted,
Mhm.
what would you say to that person?
So what I would say is absolutely feel what you're feeling. There's a reason that you're feeling it. And instead of hiding it or pushing it away or having these negative thoughts attached to what you're feeling, embrace it because it's telling you something. So that would be the first thing. And then, secondly, I would say, I know it is so hard, but just take one step or change one part of your routine each and every day. Because I will say, I had to work hard to get through, everything that I was going through. And, there's no excuses. I could have made all the excuses in the world, but if I wanted to truly move past what I was going through or just get over what was happening, I had to work hard. And a lot of people, I think, sometimes don't realize the work that needs to be put in, not only for like endurance things, but just in life in general, the work that needs to be put in. And it is hard. It sucks. Sometimes you don't even have people to really lean on. But there's always someone there that's willing to help you get through it. I don't think that you're alone in it, because I thought I was. I wouldn't be where I'm at without all the amazing people that have come into my life in the past couple years. Yeah, I always there's this scene in a Batman movie where he's like stuck in the bottom of this hole. And that's really like how my mind was. I felt like I was stuck at the bottom of this like hole, this prison. And how do I get out of it? And I had to work hard. And if you watch that scene, you'll see how hard he has to work to eventually climb out of it and get out of the prison that he was in. And it's such an emotional, like, it's just it's a movie scene. Who cares? But mentally, that's what I was feeling. Like I was in a deep hole and I just had to climb out. And that's what I think. Like all the hard work I did to get out of the hole that I was in. So just don't give up, keep going one foot in front of the other, and know that people are there for you. You're not alone in the chaos. It seems like you have to go through it alone, and you really don't.
That is an amazing message. And I'll also just add in there that if you feel alone and you feel like you're in a hole, I promise when you start climbing, other people will notice and there will be people who put their hand down and say, let me help you up. But you have to start
Yeah,
climbing first.
I love that. Yeah, absolutely.
So
Yeah.
as we wrap this up, I just want this on the record. I know you know that I think this about you, but you are so impressive, inspiring, amazing, strong, resilient, so many more things. I think so highly of you, Lindsey. And I'm so, so glad that we got to have this conversation so other people could experience that about you. And if, yeah, and if people want to reach out, follow along, just say thank you for this conversation, where's the best place for people to do that?
Probably Instagram. Yeah, my Instagram handle. I think it's Lens_0511.
Cool.
Yeah.
And I'll link that in the description so it's easy to find. But Lindsey, just thank you so much for this. I am
No, thank you. You are such an amazing person. You're so pure. I love it.
oh, thank you. Well, hey, I am excited for this to get out to the world. In the meantime, both of us will keep doing hard things, and I'm excited for the next time we get to talk.
Absolutely. More 100s for sure.
If you enjoyed this episode of the Project Indoor podcast, go ahead and subscribe, leave a review on your platform of choice, and share this episode with a friend. It helps us get more conversations like this out to more people like you. We appreciate you, and we'll talk to you next time. And one more thing. If you're looking for a community of people all striving to be better together, check out the Project Indoor Hard Things Club. The link is in the description below. We'd love to have you.